Hello everyone and welcome to Intellipaat. In this video I'll be talking about GitHub Actions. GitHub Actions enables you to create custom software development lifecycle workflows directly into GitHub repositories. It is fully integrated into GitHub. It is built into the GitHub's user interface. You don't have to use Jenkins or any other DevOps tools to manage automation. You can just add a file in your source code directly on GitHub itself. You can do automations with GitHub Actions or even build a CI/CD pipeline. Now let us take a look at the agenda for this video. Firstly, I'll be explaining why to use GitHub Actions, followed by how are these organizational tasks automated by GitHub Actions. Now next I'll be talking about what is a workflow, followed by how to program a workflow, and finally we will have a hands-on session where I'll be explaining how to implement a super linter on a push event in GitHub. But before we move on with the session, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon for regular updates. Introduction to GitHub Actions. So GitHub Actions enables you to create custom software development lifecycle workflows directly into GitHub repositories. So in the picture below, I have shown you what a software development lifecycle basically consists of. It consists of 6 steps starting from analysis stage to maintenance stage, where you will have to design, implement, test, release, create an artifact and then release it, and finally you're going to maintain your software project by releasing updates regularly. So these all things and the automations that can be done between these stages can be done through GitHub Actions. Now it is also fully integrated into the GitHub user interface. So GitHub, as we all know, is a web-based application, and GitHub Actions feature is fully integrated into GitHub web interface. Here you can also use some of the features of GitHub UI like the merge, pull request. You can also commit to it, and you can do all the events that you can do in GitHub. You can also do automations with GitHub Actions or even build a CI/CD pipeline. By looking at this picture in the slide, so this is basically a GitHub flow. That is, you will have a main branch where your source code resides, and then you will have a feature branch on which your contributors work on. So let's say you want to implement GitHub Actions during the pull requests. Your contributors will pull your code to their feature branch. So this is an event. You can add GitHub Actions here also. Or you can also add GitHub Actions workflows when merging a pull request, and when reviewing a pull request, when committing an issue. Let's say your user uses your source code, your project, and they come up with an issue and they post it on your GitHub repository. That can also be automated with GitHub Actions. And finally, after reviewing the code base from your contributor, you can also include a full CI/CD pipeline, and this is also called as an action. A CI/CD pipeline is an action in GitHub Actions. And then you can put it through testing, you can put it through deployment, etc. You can push the code to production level environments, etc. You can also do that using GitHub Actions. So all along the GitHub flow, you can use GitHub Actions anywhere you want, and CI/CD is one of them. So many people nowadays are confused that GitHub Actions is just another CI/CD tool, but it is not so. CI/CD is one of the tools you can integrate using GitHub Actions. You can do many more things other than CI/CD only. You can create your own GitHub Actions or use a pre-built one at any stage in your GitHub workflow. So now you will have to create your GitHub Actions using a scripting. We usually use the industry standard is YAML file. So we use YAML scripting to automate our GitHub Actions. Now you can create your own YAML script or use one of the pre-built ones, or any of the code built by contributors, or you can search it up on the web and just copy that code into your YAML file and put it in your repository so that it can work. Now the next point here is GitHub Actions are event driven. So every GitHub action you implement in your GitHub repository, it works on events. So what are events? Events are when something happens in or to your repository. These are called as events. Some of the examples of events are pull request created, that is PR created. Whenever a contributor joins your repository, that is also considered as an event. So whenever a user creates an issue or raises an issue, that is also considered as an event. And when you are done reviewing the contributor's code and you finally want to merge the contributor's request, so it is called as PR merged, and that is also considered as an event. And when you have other applications integrated into GitHub, a repository, that is your project, events from other apps also are considered as events within GitHub repository. GitHub Actions uses YAML syntax to define events, jobs, and steps. Now we will be taking a look at the sections called as events, jobs, and steps later in this video. All you have to know now is that the automation is done using YAML scripting. And this YAML script has to reside in your GitHub repository in a directory called .github/workflows, and then you put in your YAML file there. Finally, you can also build, test, and publish across various operating systems, platforms, and languages. Let's say you want to build, test, and publish in an event called as push on push event. You can do that in Linux environment, you can do that in Mac operating system, you can also do that in Windows operating system. Now that we know what GitHub Actions are briefly, let us deep dive and get to know why we use GitHub Actions, why it originated, why the need for GitHub Actions originated in the first place. Now let me take you to the github.com website. Now let me just go to github.com. So many people have the confusion that GitHub Actions is just another CI/CD tool, but it is actually used to automate developer workflows, as I've already discussed before. And CI/CD is one of the workflows among many others. Now, what are the tasks that are so time consuming, repetitive, tedious, and error prone that developers are in need of these workflows, or basically they are in need of this GitHub Actions feature? Now, let us take a scenario. As we all know, GitHub is a platform that hosts many open source projects, right? So they have repositories, and one of the example is Django. Now, Django is a framework for Python web development using Python language. Maintaining an open source project has many tasks like adding new contributors. As you can see here, there are more than 2,231 contributors here. So your job is to handle all these contributors, and you are also responsible for reviewing and merging pull requests. So these are called as pull requests. So these codes needs to be reviewed and merged to the main branch, and then after everything is cleared, it is ready for deployment. You can include a CI/CD pipeline between these processes as well. My point here is that there are many tasks for a project owner to do, and when the project becomes big and you have more issues being raised by users and you get more contributors and the frequency of the pull requests start getting higher, this process becomes a tedious and error prone one. This is why you should automate as many of these tasks as you can, so that you can concentrate on building the project yourself and save time. This is where GitHub Actions comes into picture. This tool can automate many of your project's automation tasks. Now that we know why GitHub Actions is used, let us move on to the next topic. How are these organizational tasks, that is introducing new contributors, reviewing pull requests and merging them to the main branch, etc. All these are called as organizational tasks or workflows. Now in this section of the video, let us see how are these workflows automated. The essential logic of GitHub Actions are as follows. When something happens in or to your repository, then you can configure automatic actions that are executed in response to these actions. Now, when something happens, what essentially means here is that it is referring to GitHub events. That is, when GitHub events occurs in your repository, these GitHub events are PR created, that is pull request created. Let's say a new contributor joins to your project, so that is also a GitHub event. And issue created. Let's say you have a user base who uses your application or your project, and they found a bug in your project and they raise an issue in your GitHub repository. So that is also an event. So there are many events like these in GitHub environment. So whenever a GitHub event happens in your repository, you can configure automatic actions that are executed in response to these triggers. Now internally, how GitHub Actions work is that it always listens to an event. It'll always be listening to an event. It'll be waiting for an event to occur that which you have specified. And when that event happens, GitHub Actions feature, this is basically a feature in GitHub, and GitHub Actions triggers a workflow that can be completely written by you. That is, you can code whatever you want it to do. That is, after the event occurs, you can code anything that you want to be happen after the event. Now, what exactly is a workflow? Let us assume a scenario for this. You are managing an open source project on GitHub, as we have discussed, and your users start raising issues. Note that an issue is considered as an event in GitHub Actions. So an issue is also an event. So whenever an issue is created by a user, GitHub Actions will trigger a workflow to execute. A workflow consists of a number of actions that take place in a particular order. That is, a workflow essentially means number of actions that are taking place in a particular order. That is, as you can see here, step 1, step 2, step 3. So in a particular order means that is only after step 1, step 2 can occur, and only after step 2, step 3 can occur, and so on. So these are called as actions, and a set of actions or a bunch of actions together are called as a job, and a bunch of jobs are called as a workflow. So when an event occurs, an event triggers a workflow, and this workflow in turn is responsible for executing jobs. In this example, you only have one job, and within that job you have a couple of steps or actions. So for example, the actions to be performed may include sorting the issue, labeling them, assigning them to a contributor in your project, etc. So step 1 can be sorting the issue. Let's say the issue is in your front end, that is your UI page. So you can sort it as UI bug, and then you can label them. That is, let's say one of the buttons is not working properly in your UI page. You can name the issue and then assign them to a contributor. Let's say one of your contributor has a tag or a name. I mean, his or her role will be front-end developer. So this has to be assigned to them. So it automatically can assign this particular issue to that contributor who is a front-end developer. So all these actions can be done. So to sum this up, all the actions in a particular order constitute a workflow. This workflow can be triggered after an event occurs in GitHub. Now, how do you program a workflow? Let us take a look at that. This is done by a YAML script. So YAML is a language and it is mainly used for scripting, automating scripts, etc. This is basically a scripting language that follows a certain syntax. That is, YAML has its own syntax, and let us see what the syntax is to create a YAML file. So a workflow YAML file will contain the following parts to it. So it basically has 5 parts. First is the events part. So as you guys can see here, on :push. So this is an event. So it is specifying on which event the job should take place. So we have specified push here. So whenever a contributor pushes code into your main branch, this event occurs. So that is the event part. And then you can name your workflow. So I have named my workflow as super linter. You can choose to skip this step, but it is advised to name your workflow so that you can come back to it later. And then you have jobs. So jobs are these whole section here. So it is a collection of steps and actions. And the first job here is super lint. So I have named my job as super lint. And below that I have indented, and indentation means these are steps, that is the number of steps within that job. So I've named my step as lint code base. So the first thing I'll be doing is lint code base, and you have another part called as runners here. So runners mean the server on which your YAML script runs on. So my YAML script is running on the Ubuntu latest version of Ubuntu. You can also select this to be Windows or Mac OS depending upon your project needs. And then you have steps, and you can name the steps. Here I have two steps. The name of my first step is to check out code, and second step is to actually implement a superlinter on the GitHub repository. So it uses here refers to the what action has to be performed in this step. So the action is action / checkout at the rate of v2. This is basically a command line interface command in Ubuntu. That is, it is a Linux command basically, which basically checks out your code. And this is also a Linux code, that is GitHub / superlinter and its version. So it basically runs the superlinter against your code that you have pushed recently. And finally, we have environment. You can select the default branch to be main, or you can also change it to be the developer branch or feature branch, etc., whatever branch you want it to be. And this is a standard template code, which is GitHub token. You will have to add that everywhere. So now that we have a rough idea of what a YAML script looks like, let us go ahead and move on to the hands-on section of this video, where I will be showing you guys how to create a new repository in GitHub and then implement a GitHub action on your GitHub repository. So let us move on to the hands-on section. Alright, now this is github.com. Here I have logged into my account, and here you can see the repository section. So I already have a few repositories of my own, but for the purposes of this tutorial I'll be creating a new repository, and I'll be naming this as GitHub Actions Test. Since we are testing our GitHub Actions here, I've named my repository as GitHub Actions Test, and I don't need a description. I will let it be public for now, and I will add a readme file. Alright, let me create my new repository. Alright, so this is a new and fresh repository which only has a readme file. Now, as I have discussed in the slides, you need to create a new file and give the path as github / and then you have to name your directory inside github directory as workflows, and then you can name your file here. So I'll be naming my file as superlinter.yml, which stands for YAML, and then I will commit this. So now if I go to my repository, my new repository, it has two files, one file and one directory, a readme file and then a directory containing the superlinter.yml file. I have not put any code into it just yet. So now let me just go into my YAML file and add the YAML script that we had discussed in the script, which is basically a superlinter script. Alright, I have just now copied the superlinter code and then pasted it on my YAML file, and now I will commit my YAML code. Update superlinter, commit to the main branch. Alright, and now if I go back to my repository and go to my superlinter YAML file, now it has the YAML script, which is basically a superlinter. Now let me explain what superlinter does. So superlinter basically checks your code, and it If your code adheres to certain standards, let's say for example Python language, if you're using Python language, it has to adhere to PEP8 standards. Now PEP8 is the original python.org's standard. So let's say if you want to contribute to an open source project on GitHub, and you're using Python language to do so, you cannot just write Python code however you like. You have to follow certain standards, and these standards are called as PEP8. So standards meaning you have to follow certain structures, you have to leave indentation, you have to leave certain spaces at the right places, and then only it will accept your code. And superlinter is a program or a software to check this standards, and this is the code for it. Now let us implement it right now. Now I will go to my repository, and then I will create a new file which is a simple Python file, and I will call it main.py. Alright, now I have written a simple code here, that is I've printed hello world in the first statement, and then I have defined a function called as welcome, which basically prints welcome to Intellipaat. And then I have one more print statement after the function which says this is a tutorial for GitHub Actions. And finally I'm calling the welcome function, and the control goes here and it prints your welcome to Intellipaat message. So the output should be somewhat like this. First it prints hello world, and then this is a tutorial for GitHub Actions, and then it prints welcome to Intellipaat. Now this is the standard PEP8 indentation. Now I will remove one space here. This should also work in any of the Python IDE that or your text editor that you are working on. But according to PEP8 standards, this will be wrong. That is, if you define a function, you should leave two line spaces after the function and before it as well. And I will do one more mistake here. I will add a semicolon after calling the function, which the superlinter will not like, and it will throw an error. Now let me show you. If I commit this, it basically means I'm pushing this new code to my repository, right? So, and if you guys remember, in my YAML script, the GitHub event is push. So as soon as I push this code, a trigger will be launched, and it will run the superlinter code. So let me just show you how it happens. Okay, now if I go to actions and main.py, I have just pushed the main.py file, and it is running a workflow right now. This should actually fail because I intentionally committed two mistakes. That is, I've added a semicolon to a function, and I've not given one line, that is, I've not added a new line before a function. So it should basically give me an error. The linting will take a few moments. So it will first set up a job, and it has to go through standard procedure. I will pause this and come back to you guys. Alright, now the linting has taken place, and then in the superlinter step there is one error. Let us see what it is. If I just scroll down, there is an error here in the main.py file, and this says what error has taken place. So it says after print hello world you have to leave a new line, so that is one mistake. And it says I have to delete this line, that is welcome semicolon, and I have to add just welcome. I have to call the function. Okay, this is what the error says. Now let us go back to our repository and clean up this code, and then run and then push it to our repository again. So here, as you can see, it has not gone through the linter, and your GitHub action has failed for this particular push. So let me just edit the Python file. So I'll be adding a new line here, and then I'll be removing the semicolon here. And now I will be committing this and pushing it to my repository right now. And this in turn should trigger a GitHub action. It did, and it is right now running this YAML script. Now let us check if the code that we have edited passes the superlinter or not. Alright, the workflow has run, and it is showing a tick mark, green tick mark, since we have corrected our mistakes and followed the page standards to write the Python code. So I have left one more new line here, and then I have removed the semicolon here. Now the Python syntax is correct and adheres to the PEP 8 Python standards. Now it is correct and it is ready to be pushed to the production. So this is how you can implement a GitHub action. So if you just press the actions tab, here you will have a log of all the workflows that has run since you have created this YAML file, and you can include I only have one workflow here, which is super linter. You can add as many workflows as you want. You can create multiple at the same time. You can create a YAML script for pushes for an event, for the same event that is pushed at the same time, or you can create one YAML file for push, one for pull request, one for when a new contributor joins, etc. Let's say when a new contributor joins, he has to know what the project is about, and you can add a welcome message also and give him the documentation of the project as well. You can do that as well. Thank you for watching till the end, guys. Have a nice day.
Just a quick info, guys. If you want to make a career in cloud computing, then Intellipaat provides an advanced certification on cloud and DevOps by IIT Madras. This course is taught by industry experts and IIT Madras faculty. This course is designed to upskill and land your dream job.